So, as I said, this is a discussion panel, and as we kind of all know, and we've been hearing about so brilliantly this morning, online communication, online and virtual kind of engagement has become somewhat of a norm over the past I keep saying 18 months, I feel like it's longer than that just now, but it's become a bit of the norm. And what we wanted to discuss is that going forward. So what does that look like as we kind of turn to some sort of normality? So we have 4 brilliant people that have all either embraced or used digital in totally new and different ways and really adapted to what's gone on. And they're going to kind of lead a bit of the discussion. But if any of you guys have any questions, any comments, then please pop them into the chat. And every now and again, I'll butt in at the right time to their discussion and add in your questions and everything. So I'm going to hand over to Lizzie, Jess, Stu, and Kenji to get going.
Oh, thanks, Becky. So to start with, we're just going to introduce ourselves really quickly, but please do, as Becky said, get involved in the chat. If there's a point that you feel really passionate about, unmute yourself and jump in, that's great. But yeah, we'll just really quickly introduce ourselves. So I'll start with me, because it's always really awkward when I go introduce yourself and no one knows what they say. So I'm Lizzie. My colleagues call me the digital wizard, but since they haven't bought me a pointy hat yet, I'm going to go with my job title of Learning Technology Officer for the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland. So I work based at Edinburgh Zoo and the Highland Wildlife Park. And my role is to do basically everything digital that we do. So it used to be a lot of digital things in the classroom, like virtual reality and our amazing immersive classroom. Some of you might have experienced if you came to the 2019 BIAZA conference. But now it's a lot more focused on online stuff. Our website Zoodle, which is hosting the conference website for this event as well, and I'll talk a bit more about what we do a little bit later on. Kenji, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I am definitely not a digital wizard. I think officially I'm the coffee boy, although I was upgraded to coffee person in a recent exchange. I work for the College Development Network. Technically, I'm the digital and innovation person, so I support the 26 colleges in Scotland in terms of any digital aspect of delivery or curriculum.
Thanks. Jess, because I can see you on my screen.
Amazing. Hello, I am Jess. I am one of the climate change learning coordinators at Glasgow Science Centre. None of that has digital in the title at all. However, as the pandemic obviously impacted all of our lives, I've spent the past 18 months to 2 years working on writing and curating a number of digital projects that we've released.
Thanks. And last but definitely not least, we'll go to Stu.
Hi everyone, I'm Stu. I'm the school's programme manager for the National Marine Aquarium and by proxy the Ocean Conservation Trust, which is the charity that run our lovely aquarium. I've been working similar to Jess over the last couple of years, putting together a lot of programmes and trying to adapt what we do with schools here to schools that aren't here. So schools that are all over the country, in fact, through our digital programme.
Perfect, thanks. So it's a bit of an icebreaker for us four, because I've kind of thrown us together about 10 minutes ago for the first time, but also for everybody in the chat. This is a question that we use on a lot of things that we do online like this at our ZSS. If you could be any animal, what would you be and why? And so everyone else who's here, please let us know in the chat as well. If you've got any amazing answers, it would be great. Does anyone want to jump in? Have you got an animal that you would be? Otherwise I'm going to pick. Go, Stu.
Yeah, I recently had this conversation and decided that I'd quite like to be a frog because I think life would be pretty simple. It'd be nice to be a frog.
I think that's quite similar to my answer. Mine changes like every day. I feel like a different animal. Today I'm quite sleepy, so I think I'd quite like to be a panda. Someone can just sort of bring me food and I can nap.
I struggled with this. I think out of all of the things that you said yesterday, Lizzie, this was the one I sat pondering on for the longest time. I think I'd be a whale shark, there it is there. purely because number one, they're super cool, and number two, they just travel such vast distances for migration, and I was like, yep, done.
I would be going for chinchilla, primarily because they are dressed for the kind of weather we get in Scotland. They just, and they feel so lovely. I mean, literally. And they're more active at night, which, based on my recent Netflix binging, that sort of ties in with that. And they're fairly long-lived for small rodents. So yeah, all good.
Excellent reasoning. I've got some people coming in the chat as well. Richard wants to be a reindeer. I feel you. I'm getting very Christmassy at the moment. And Becky's an axolotl because they're amazing, which is a good enough reason. So I think because we're here to talk about sort of digital, the sort of virtual, I think it would be good if we could get a picture of what everyone's kind of done during, maybe before, but also during the pandemic, what your experiences with digital up to this point have been. So if you can tell us kind of what you've done that you're proud of. If you've not done anything at all, then tell us why. And also, please feel free to tell us anything that didn't work as well. The theme of the whole conference is lessons learned. So I think at conferences, people often are just sort of showing the shiny things and saying, look how amazing I am. And I think there's real value in sharing what didn't work. And we can all learn from that as well. So you're all looking very thoughtful. Does anyone have anything that you can jump in and start us off with?
I can talk about the college sector, which is where I'm from. So actually, in my own case, I was an English teacher, ESOL by trade, and previously I'd worked for a distance-based language school, and I developed all of their online programs. So I've always been an advocate for distance-based programs and online learning. So, when the pandemic happened, I was sad. Like I'm not happy for anyone who's been ill or had negative experiences, but for the learning ecologists who were always banging on about, the opportunities offered by digital, like secretly we've gone, it's our time. So as a community in the college sector, everyone is essentially discovered this shift to digital. A lot of people who previously wouldn't have engaged, the most common response has been, it's not as bad as I thought it would have been. And they've discovered that the entry into online delivery is filled with opportunity. Most colleges have responded well. The idea of video communication, initially, confidence is the main hurdle to overcome, both from students and staff, just appearing on a screen. Like for somebody like me who genuinely loves the sound of his own voice, this is a dream. But for, I understand other people, cameras, speaking in front of people is not a thing. And for students especially, so confidence at first. Over the last 18 months, what we've seen is for extended programs where you have multiple interactions online over a period of time, lower levels have found it harder to engage and stick the course. Higher levels have fared better. The main point is really the notion of communication, allowing everyone present to have a voice and interact and participate. And that's the hardest part of delivery. It always has been. The sense of collaboration, we're in it together. The idea of social presence, the idea of how you fit in with everyone else inside this medium. And that's a point that we struggle with today. But, as far as I'm concerned, I get to hear my own voice, so it's all good.
You've got some people agreeing with you there as well in the chat, that virtual has been a great platform, and people are really excited that it's allowed us to reach out, beyond our usual sort of circle of influence, to talk to people all over the world as well, which is, it's definitely been really exciting for us as well. Stu, do you have anything to tell us about what you've got up to?
Well, I wasn't going to talk too much about it, so hopefully some of you people that have tuned in today will be able to listen to Freya, who's actually sat next to me in the invisible background. She's going to be talking about largely what we're doing at the moment and what we've done over the last 18 months. Like a lot of people, we've had to adapt, and start providing these virtual experiences, which we do for the schools and public. But I just wanted to add in, I don't think it will come up later, that our virtual engagement sort of in the classroom, remote education from the aquarium here started about 6 years ago on Google Hangouts with a project that was written. It was, you know, some of the stuff that's happening today feels quite pioneering, but for us, certainly within our peers and the people we were working with 6 years ago, it was really unheard of, and teachers were terrified at the prospect of trying to connect in on Google Hangouts from the classroom 6 years ago. It was, you know, it was just this wild thing, and it's come so far now that it's really encouraging to see. I think we're going to talk about it later, but I'm really excited about what comes next as well. What the next evolution is. Like you say, Kenji, it's cool to be able to see people and hear them. It comes up with some challenges, but it's the next steps that I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I agree. I think so my background, I've worked for RZSS for 4.5 years now. It's absolutely flown. I've loved every minute of it. But my background has been in learning technology for universities. So it's kind of a little bit similar to maybe what Kenji does now. And so some of the things that we're doing, that we're talking about now, you know, I was playing with sort of 4.5 years ago. But the thing that I see that's very different between the sort of education, higher education sector and something like what we do in zoos and aquariums is that in the university, I was being given a technology and I was being told, how can we use this? Play with this thing, this shiny new toy. Think of a problem that we can use this solution for. Whereas in this industry, the thing that I absolutely love is that people come to me and they're like, I have this idea, I want to make it happen. What tech do I use? And so I'm kind of actually coming up with those solutions rather than trying to play with the shiny thing for the sake of the shiny thing. And I think that is definitely what the pandemic has given. It's given kind of a meaning to some of the tech that maybe didn't even have it before. Jess, you're nodding a lot.
I was about to jump in and be like, I think that's absolutely how we started as well with the pandemic, is that most people might not be familiar with Glasgow Science Centre. So the one line is that we are a face-to-face science museum that primarily prizes itself on a lot of in-person science communication through workshops, drop-in sessions, and outreach as well. And so when the pandemic hit, everything we knew went up in flames. Not really. It really kind of helped us. We took a step back and really thought about what we wanted. And so many of the teachers around Glasgow were saying that they were struggling with what they were going to teach online, or even parents. Parents were going, how do we even teach science? We have no idea where to even start. And so that began our digital journey, is that we started creating GSE at home videos, which were really short, 4-5 minute videos that kids could actually do at home, or young people could do at home, with materials that didn't require parents or teachers to go out and buy. So there were household items that a child could go on a treasure hunt and find, come back and be able to undertake this scientific experiment or activity. And a lot of the time, some of them were outdoors as well, so encouraged the young people to go outdoors as well. So realistically, the pandemic presented us with an opportunity to step outside of something that we were quite comfortable in. And so our GSE at home videos really took off, and they got a lot of communities around Glasgow through sort of that first lockdown, which was really great.
Sorry, bro, I muted myself and then forgot. Technology. Thanks, Jess. That's amazing. I think you touched on something that we're definitely going to want to discuss maybe a little tiny bit later, is the, and kind of Becky's asking the same in chat, is like what we'll take into future developments. And I think, we've changed things sometimes like massively, and everything looks completely different. And it's kind of a balance between like the things that worked we want to take forward, but also, in your programs in the Science Centre, in zoos, and then also, in college classrooms and things, is how do we do this without replacing that amazing in-person experience that we can offer when things are a bit more normal as well. So for us, I banged on about it at like every possible BIAZA IZE conference that there is about our online platform Zoodle. So we have our website. I'm going to talk a bit more about it tomorrow. Little sneaky plug for my talk tomorrow. But we've set up an online resource that we already had it, and it was mostly for teachers. So the biggest change that we made in the pandemic was to change the focus of what we were supplying, and we started offering to families instead of specifically to teachers. So families learning together, so parents could learn new things about their kids. And the goal of what we were doing was to try and reconnect people with nature during a time when the government told them to stay indoors. So we made 32 new topics. That was 180 different resources to those topics. And my talk tomorrow is going to do a deep dive into the data that I collected over the last year about what worked and what didn't. But I'm really proud of the work that all of my team have put into it. We had 43,000 families logging on over the year between March and March and sort of main lockdowns in Scotland. And the number that I'm the most proud of is the 43,000 is quite cool. But of those 43,000 families, we had 11.6 is our average interactions. So people weren't just popping on the page and disappearing. They were doing 11 things as an average, which is really exciting. And on the note of kind of what worked and what didn't, like I said, I'm going to go into it a little bit more tomorrow, but I think the most important takeaway for us from that was that we needed marketing behind us for it. We were putting all these cool things online, and basically, if nobody knows about it, nobody's going to use it. So we had to have something to shout out about it, that it was there. And you can definitely see spikes in our data of when the main Edinburgh Zoo page did a Facebook post. You can see we had thousands more people on the page than we did before. And so I think that's a key takeaway for us from that one. And so going on the back of that, are there any lessons that all of you and everyone listening as well has learned from the kind of quick pivot that we've done to digital that you want to take forward, either that you're going to be using digital again in the future, or just the way of working that you might be able to take forward into your in-person delivery? Does anyone want to jump in?
Again, just because I like the sound of my own voice.
Please, Genji. We like it too.
You're inviting me. So I suppose there's the need to understand that people do need to have some level of digital literacy in their interactions online. So we can't assume that everyone has the skills. I've put it into chat, but we created a series of 8 very, very, very short videos introducing people about how to present online, generally from home. Tips around how students might interact with you, how to set up the technical aspects, and it's a very informal series of videos, and that's important because you need to keep people relaxed. We noticed that people didn't really like a formal style when they came online. The informality was really important, making that connection, and the idea of giving some participation. Now, I really like the idea of the science projects that came out of GSC. So similarly, we were talking to Dundee Science Centre, and they'd sent out boxes of science kits out to families in the areas. And it's a brilliant idea, that physicality of linking something physical that you're doing at home while you're online, and also having something to show and to feel that you're really participating. We found in college courses, oddly enough, we went back to this other technology that required no power source, contained a lot of content, and involved some kind of physical interaction. I can't remember what they called it, book, I don't know, something like that. The idea of a textbook, actually having a physical resource that everybody could access that had a contained piece of information, easy to reference, easy to follow along with, provided a good core sort of focus of attention for a lot of online activities. And that was quite an interesting thing to happen, given our recent attention of just pointing to YouTube videos and all the resources that are out there. Supplementing it with a core text was actually quite an interesting move for some of us. In terms of how we carry on forward, 2 things that we have gone extremely well across the college sector is online support. So some kind of drop-in chat facility to connect with support services or even your lecturer. So the lecturer, and shouldn't be available all of the time, but choosing some points of time to say between 12 and 2 on a Tuesday afternoon, I'll be free if you want to drop in and chat, and just text chat, simple area. The informality of that, the idea of not going to a special place or a special room to talk through some issue, and doing it from the comfort and privacy from your home was sometimes seen as a really positive step. And I think going forward, we'll definitely focus on that as an area. There was another point, but I totally forget, and I feel that I'm talking too much. So I'm sure Stu really needs to say something important at this point.
Sure, I can fill in. Thanks, Kenji. So, I mean, one of our highlights on the schools program during the pandemic was putting out a series of live lessons during the lockdown period. We scheduled it every Friday. People would tune in. We really hit a good streak on the marketing, Lizzie, with that one. We got something like 60,000 people that tuned into our first YouTube broadcast, and we really benefited, I think, on all of our activities with schools remotely by having the two-way connectivity, the interactivity. As you mentioned before, one of the things that we learned along the way occurred during that live lesson series, when we were very much learning on our feet, and we were keen to progress and keen to develop, and we had this huge audience. But we tried, live delivery is fine, but live experimenting doesn't work so well. And we ended up trying a new technique with a new piece of hardware that we hadn't had the chance to test. And we had an echo and a feedback in the room where we were doing it. And we didn't realize until after the session had happened. And two things came out of that really for us in terms of learning. One is it's really exciting, but we have to go at a reasonable rate. We're venturing into new territory, but make sure that we're doing so in a reasonable, logical, progressed state. And the other thing is, I suppose, touching on again what you said there, Kenji, the idea of having support people involved in any kind of live production. So the live two-way thing is invaluable. But if you can, and we sometimes struggle staff-wise here, depending what's going on, but having someone in the background to support and be able to help people, schools that can't connect in, individuals when they're connecting in from home, one class suddenly becomes 30 different connections with everyone trying to connect. And so in the past, we've benefited from having people on the phone. We've given out the phone number before, and we've got support people that can talk individuals through. So I think that's something I'd love to see as we continue building those digital audiences and getting interactivity, but having the background support for it is vital.
I think that's really important. Yeah, definitely. So because we are quite tight on time, it's the shortest panel session ever. I'm going to pop to our last point. I'm going to drop Jess right in it because you didn't speak on the last one. Okay. So we wanted to just chat, and definitely all you guys in the audience as well, please get involved in the chat on this one, is what your dream education program would look like. So thinking of all the lessons that we've learned over the pandemic, everything that you've loved to do before and since, if you had unlimited budget, unlimited resources, what would your dream education program look like, and would it involve digital at all?
A short answer, yes. Of course, I think for us, I know, thank goodness. I think for us, we've been able to open up our audience to communities that we wouldn't have reached before, and schools that we wouldn't have reached before in the Highlands and the Islands through our Learning Lab program. And so I think our dream education program would be a hybrid of both, where video is used to support that face-to-face delivery, and even in classroom, both pre and post visit as well. I think that would be our ideal, is that we were able to use digital to set up that pre-visit and engage the students from the get-go, have the visit in the middle, and have it be sort of that middle part of that journey, and then follow it up with that legacy post video as well, with interviews and legacy content as well, whether that's resources too. So I think that would be the dream.
I think that's a really good point that kind of just fits perfectly with the idea of this conference as a whole, is that so you're kind of blending the digital and the in-person without replacing the in-person. You're just adding value. And I think that's a really great idea. Kenji, Stu, what would your dream education programs look like if you had unlimited everything?
So it's just because Stu paused slightly, so I'm leaping in there. What can I say? Sorry. So a few things that were really important: creating a space for social interaction. So we noticed that education is excellent, but just meeting and talking to people, you learn so much from your peers as well as from the people who are instructing you. So creating a space in any educational program that allows the participants just to talk with each other is really, really important. For educators, we often talk to a Zoom or Teams wall of black boxes. That can be difficult. So we encourage people to put even a picture, a face, anything on there, so you're talking to something, because an idea that you're part of something. If I had an unlimited budget, I would encourage flexibility in all educational programs. The biggest change for us has been allowing people remotely coming into events that they couldn't normally travel to, but we know on a day-to-day basis, people struggle with commuting from one location to another. Bus fares, taxi fares, trains, these things are expensive. And for a lot of people, it just denies them the ability to really connect. So offering more hybrid experiences where you open up live face-to-face in-person events is brilliant, but exploring more around the technicality and the infrastructure to support that hybrid experience of getting people coming in remotely and attending in person would be an ideal for me, with no focus on budget. The problem, the only issue that we've faced so far, because we have that infrastructure, is that the hybrid, the remote attendee is often the poor cousin in any experience. And so it's just continuing to explore more ways to make sure that everyone is engaged as we take them along this trip.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think that's kind of echoing a little bit of what's going on in the chat as well. Andy from Colchester is saying that, you know, as people are allowed back into the zoo, they're finding it harder to get people back on, like to keep using the digital as well. And so maybe the blended approaches, the just making sure that anything we do digitally is adding important value is probably the way to go. Stu, what would your dream look like?
I think it is all about blending the two, isn't it? I don't think we're ever going to get to a situation again where only one exists. For me, I've spoken to a couple of people. Given an unlimited resource, I think moving more in the virtual engagement. We've seen some changes to Facebook recently, and I've been to a couple of different virtual events where we are looking at a situation with avatars, with surround, with virtual presence in places. We're really lucky to have the aquarium here. We have a capacity on the number of visitors and things. I think that there's been real progress has been made in terms of bringing people's faces up on a screen and having a conversation. I think we can supplement that with boxes and kits or printable instructions for people to do at home. But I'd really like to see online communities starting to develop where people have membership to and a presence, so that we can connect individuals in spaces rather than on a screen. In this way, you can be meeting with individuals and talking to them, so children can have an experience in a school and then go home and connect back in to all sorts of content and each other, building a kind of modern, forum or chat room that they used to have in the late 90s, where you'd go on and talk to someone random from another country, but being able to continue that experience. We're involved in stuff with France at the moment, and creating some kind of hub where people can do that, and it really ties everything together, I think is the dream for me.
Thanks. I think that's lovely. So we're running out of time, but I think that's a really nice kind of point to finish on. I think very quickly, my dreams are mad. Yours are all very kind of lovely, and I'm sort of dreaming of creating a fleet of environmentally friendly helicopters to fly people out around the world with VR headsets so they can join us in the zoo. But I think I just kind of think that the summary of what I think we were all kind of saying is that virtual's been scary but worth it. Would you agree with that? And that thanks, that's it, my world dream big. I think that the going forwards, it has got value, as somebody I saw put in the chat, that young people particularly are, they've grown up with these digital technologies, and the more they come to places like this, they just kind of expect to be able to use them, and so why shouldn't we do it? There's a mantra in technology is kind of meet people where they are, use the platforms that people are already on rather than trying to convert them, and I think that kind of my catchphrase from when I started even 4 years ago was that technology has this power to connect people. We obviously have these fantastic sites, these fantastic locations, and so we should work to use the technology to enhance what we're offering, not replace it. Thanks to everybody, both all of our panelists and everybody who is joining in the chat there. We do have the discussion forum, which is on the website, which was mentioned earlier, if you want to continue chatting about this. At the moment, as I think Andy told us earlier, it does require to have a completely free Zoodle account to use the forums. I will have a play this afternoon and see if I can get them open without that. But if there's anything that you want to say, again, like my email address is around as well. And thank you is the last thing I've got to say. Thank you to our panelists for joining. Thank you to everyone who's joined in with the chat. And back to Becky.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I think for me that was so interesting. Lizzie isn't bigging up her dream at all there. We've also talked about drones and how we could possibly use them to get things out and about. So yeah, one day, a small fleet of helicopters, it'll be great. But yeah, I think it's such an important topic. I think it's going to be something that we all kind of start to move forward with and work out what works for us and what doesn't work for us, and how we can make all of that wonderful kind of the things that we've learned and the tools that we've used over the past couple of years or so, how we can make sure we don't lose that, and how we can keep the reach and the impact that they had while blending in our much wanted face-to-face engagement again.